Hey guys, getting us live over on YouTube. All right. Well, guys, it's me again today. We do not have, unfortunately, Hugh with us today. He's having a minor procedure today, so he wasn't able to be here. But the good news is we're here to take some questions and cover a little bit of information. And one of the things that we get asked regularly is how to determine commissions. And so I know this isn't a sales portion. Of course, I can take any questions you might have. There's no one better than Hugh, of course, but I'm going to talk about commissions a little bit. And then if you have any questions about anything, it is payment processing, be happy to answer. So this is how it works. You get anywhere between 20 and 50% of the residual revenue, right? And it doesn't matter which product we have in DAC. But what is the residual revenue on payment processing? Well, that depends on how much profit is made from the customer. There's expenses that Visa charges, the processor charges, et cetera. And then there's the price that the customer is charged. And that gap becomes profit. We get profit, and of the profit, we create a bonus revenue. And between you and I, the bonus revenue is it's 90% of whatever the profit is we get. So if there's $100 made monthly, it doesn't matter what their processing amount is, just so you know. If we make 100, then the residual revenue is going to be 90, basically, and we pay out all of that. So you make anywhere between 20 and 50% of whatever the residual revenue is. So the deals that are dual pricing, or what we used to call cash discount, they make more profit. There's more profit in those deals than in the standard processing. Okay. So if someone switches to dual pricing, the residual revenue is going to be higher, and it's generally about 0.25% of sales. So if someone is on dual pricing, generally, not always, depends on how many people come in their place with expensive cards. Are they using a bunch of Capital One 5% cash back cards? If so, there's less profit in the deal to you and I, because there's more charged by Visa on those. And so in the end, those things play into the mix. If someone's just doing debit cards, well, that's better because there's more profit if it's just a debit card. So we can't ever tell you a specific percentage because we don't know what type of credit cards are being used in their establishment, right? And is it all small $20 transactions, or is it big 2,000 transactions? That affects the profit because there's a transaction cost in every transaction. If there's less transactions, higher volume, there's more profit generally. So there's a lot of things at play here. And so what we do is say whatever the profit is, we create a residual revenue from that we don't pay out more than we get, right? That you make between 20 and 50% of the residual revenue. Now, again, the profit on a dual pricing is generally higher. It's generally about 0.25% of the sales. So if you did 100,000 in sales, 1% would be 1,000. 0.25% would be $250 would be the residual revenue on $100,000 in sales. You make 20 to 50% of that. Obviously, you want to get to the point where you're doing 2,000 residual revenue, so you're at the 50% level. 50%, and again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a residual commission chart that you make between 20 and 50% as you climb up that ladder. You start at 20 to 50% of the residual revenue. As you get more personal residual revenue, you go to 30, 35, 40, 50, et cetera. And that is because you get bonuses onto your 20, the base commission. So your base commission of 20, and you can get up to 30% in bonuses, which puts you at 50%. How do you get to the top level? 2,000 residual revenue. So a few payment processing customers and you're there, right? It doesn't take a lot of them if there's 250 residual revenue from just one doing $100,000, right? If you have 8 of those, you're already at 2,000 residual revenue, and you're already at the 50% mark. So if you can keep in mind, dual pricing is about 0.25% of sales is the residual revenue. On standard pricing, there's really no rule of thumb. I would say, I'm sorry. Scratch this. You make about 0.25% if it's standard price. That's not the residual dual pricing. Okay, so rewind if I could. If it's dual pricing, the residual revenue is generally about a half a percent of sales. Okay, so the residual revenue is about 0.5% of sales if it's dual pricing, which means you make 20 to 50% of that and you get up to 0.25% of sales. Okay, so that's what you want to look at, is you make about 0.25% of the sales. And if it's dual pricing, if it's not, you're going to make less than that. I don't know how much less, but it's going to be less than that. We don't know until you see the product card mixture again. All right. So if you're looking at, well, how do I make a significant income with payment processing? Well, number one, it's leading with dual pricing, which is what everyone's going to want to go to. And it's the best way to retain your customers. So leading with dual pricing. But again, if someone doesn't want to do that, we have standard pricing. We'll save them money, but continue to stay in contact with them. So when they're ready to move to dual pricing, they do it with you rather than someone else. Okay. But dual pricing is the easiest way to help the business. It doesn't affect the customers that negatively. So it helps the business, doesn't affect the customers that negatively. Very few ever mention it. So dual pricing is what you want to lead with. All right. And then you also earn the highest residual income on that because there's a little more profit in those deals. So you say, why is there more profit? There's more profit because if we're charging the customer 4%, the customer buying that $17 coffee and sandwich and ice cream, and we're charging them 4% more. So they're, instead of paying 17, they're paying 17.68. They're paying that 4%. Well, that 4% covers more than the fees, and generally more than the fees on that transaction. Unless it's an Amex card or something, then it actually didn't. But it's generally 4% is higher than what we charge with a cost plus standard processing that the business pays. So that 4% usually more than covers and creates a little more profit for the processor. If we do cost plus, which is standard processing, whatever the card cost is, plus maybe 50 basis points or half a percentage, or 25 basis points, which would be 0.25%. A basis point is just there's 100 basis points in 1%. So when you say 25 basis points, it's not quite, this is 1%. It's only 0.25%. All right. So you make more profit on the other ones. So dual pricing, generally you're going to earn about 0.25%. Residual revenue is going to be about 0.5%. Standard processing is going to be less than that. You sign up a business doing $500,000 a month. Well, 0.5% of that is 2,500. Boom, you're already at the, let me just make sure that math, have 500,000, 10% is 50, 1% is 5. Yeah. 0.5% is 20. You're already at 2,500 residual revenue. You'd already be at the 50% mark. You're making 1,250 a month every month for the life of that customer. Right. So that's how you can start setting yourself up. When you talk to Hugh, and he's been doing this 20 plus years, and he's seen the ups and downs he saw before there were debit cards, right? And then so he's seen all this change over time in processing costs and gift cards and all these different things. But when you take care of your customers, they move through this with you as their provider. You get paid a percentage of their sales for life. And if you owned a percentage of a company, and I'm going to end with this, my mindset is, and I encourage you all to adopt it, is every success philosophy says earn passive residual income. They all say it, whether it's your investments, earning interest and reinvesting that, or getting dividends from a stock, or having rental properties, anything that can generate cash cow money coming in every single month without you having to do a whole lot is a success principle. Well, when you can think about earning 0.25% of someone else's sales every single month, and now it's just a matter of diversifying, and how many businesses can you be partnered with by being their processor? How many of them can you have by being their processor? So every funding client you have, you should try to help them get their processing. Every healthcare client, you should try to get their processing, right? So as you generate a book of business at 0.25% of sales, you keep growing your book of business, right? When you're at $1 million, you're doing about 0.5% of that, 5,000 residual revenue. You get to 2 million, you're doing about 10,000 residual revenue. You're making 5 million a month. 4 million, and you're 4 million times that, you're doing about 20,000 residual revenue, and you're making about 10,000 a month. So that's how you get your personal residuals. And the good news is it's one-time investments. You get a lot of no's, but you get one-time investments can turn into a lot of yeses. And that's what we encourage you to do for building out your payment processing base. So hopefully that helped. That's a question we get a lot. There's really, again, based on the cards used, we don't know the profit on the deal, and it changes month by month. It always changes based on what type of cards are used, debit card, credit card, cashback card, etc. But dual pricing, you can pretty much kind of bank on at 0.5% of sales will be residual revenue. Therefore, you can make up to 0.25%. Any questions about anything at all, folks, as it relates to payment processing? Morgan, nothing?
Nothing on my end. Oh,
All
we've
right,
got
guys.
one hand up. If you're good to take one, we've
Yeah,
got one.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Christopher Sanchez, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey, David, real quick question. Has the list expanded for businesses that we do not work with for payment processing?
No,
Okay, awesome.
nope, nope. All right, thank you. And guys, if obviously Hugh's going to be back next week. Wade will not be back next week on Wednesdays. I'll be doing next Wednesdays. Ellen is, of course, back on Tuesday. She was there this week as well. So next week we'll have the standard schedule, but I'll be filling in for Wade on the Bank Breezy on Wednesday. But other than that, Hugh will be back. So bring your questions. I love watching Hugh give case studies of customers he's going through and how he's doing it. And by the way, if you were on yesterday, we talked about the amazing new Select. We've got a deal happening right now with the Select pricing. Wade was just telling me about it as I hung up. I see he's on here, but that's why I was a minute late. We were talking on the phone. So it's happening right now at this moment.